right, happy Thursday, everybody. It is the 29th of April. This is the edition where we are covering the second principle of the 9 principles today, Leandro. The first one last week, last week was pretty awesome. If it even holds a candle to our session last week, we're going to be in good shape. I did do something different today, though, everybody, and it's on purpose. You might think, oh, he's cutting corners, but you guys know that I believe that the longest distance between us and our goals or dreams is a shortcut. So it's not a shortcut. It's just kind of a different format where when I go through this, I think I mentioned it to you. The reason my buddy referenced this book is because it reminded him of me, which is a real compliment, actually. Especially, we all like to be respected by those whom we respect, right? Isn't that the truth? So anyway, what I do is I write notes and I underline. So I'm gonna I went through it like I did kind of a dry run, Leandro, maybe an hour and a half ago. And I like this because instead of me feeling like I got to get to something, or sometimes I write something down, I put like in my notes in a star. It's like I got to hit this point. Well, I think I can do both. I would rather kind of the spirit of the group take over a little bit. And if that's me talking, that's fine. I think more of you and less of me is better, but that's my own personal opinion. So I just thought we'd go through and I'll kind of thumb through here and pick up some notes and really want to encourage interaction. Ways maybe that because I will tell you, there is one spot in this chapter, and Leandro, now that I mentioned that, we may or may not get to it, right? But there's one spot in this chapter that I got to be honest with you, it really validated me. It really validated me. And I'll get to it, but it was so revelational because it's one of those things where it's like, is something wrong with me? Like, am I flawed? Am I just a jerk? I mean, why has this happened? And I'll actually make a point to get to it because it was very revelational for me. So I don't know if you're having those types of moments in the book. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe it's something I cover and you can, what I don't want this to be is I used to teach a study. In fact, I did for years off and on. And I do recognize that in that study, Leandro, at church, that a lot of times the group becomes everyone speaking what they know, almost as if to say, here's what I know about it. And that, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I don't like it when it gets to a point where everybody's trying to, I wouldn't say brag, but, justify their presence by, re-articulating things that we're already talking about. I'd rather be a little bit more raw. But again, I just want to let it go a little bit. So, all right, before I start, anybody want to chime in? Any big news, errors, omissions, additions, scares, concerns that we need to cover?
No, everybody's
all right.
decided to continue.
Yeah. We're not on Facebook.
We're not.
No, we got a thing going where me and Leandro are working on it. But listen, honestly, I'm okay with that. I mean, there's two sides to me. One is the more people get the message, the better. But you all who know me, are we gonna have a cameo?
Yes. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Happy Thursday. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh my goodness, you kidding me? That's awesome. Awesome. Hey, so that just like that, the viewership's going to go up when we post it. So one side of me is, man, is it hot in here? Is it me?
It's you. Freezing in here.
I'm sweating.
So you're saying I'm hot?
Yes.
Thank you, baby. You got to get it where you can, Leandro. I mean, shoot, man. All right. So one side of me is like the more people who get the message, the better. And I know this will be recorded and it'll be sent out, and people who want to watch it can watch it. But the other side of me is I really get pumped when I'm around people that are making a sacrifice to be here. Does that make sense? And not that people that watch it later, I know that people can't, so hear my heart on that, right? It's an energy thing. What can I tell you? And this is a lot about energy. This book, which coincides with the Energy Bus, which I read, I told you in 2 settings. I've actually bought that for 4 people already. I finished it last Saturday. It hadn't been a week. It hadn't been in week 5 actually. My brother, I talked to him yesterday, and I sent him one. Anyway, this is a lot about energy. And last week we talked about principle 1, which is dig it up. And dig it up can mean various things, right, Leandro? It can mean dig up your fear. What is keeping us from moving on? Is it a situation in our childhood that we need to deal with? Is it relationship problems that we need to deal with? What do we need to dig up and actually deal with? And it goes kind of counter to what we're taught when we're young, right? When we have a nightmare, we tell our parents that we just, we got this horrible vision. One more time. There she goes. See, Leandro, squirrel, I'm done. Wife, I'm out. So anyway, the things that we need to deal with. And it was an emotional meeting last week. And I would tell you that you know, if you're reading with an interest to identify where we can improve, it changes the read, right? Even though I told you Bill gave me this because it reminds him a lot of me. And there are a lot of principles in here that in fact, a lot of times I just write, like he articulates it differently. And I'll write what my little euphemism is. But when I read it with an interest so sometimes you read things to validate yourself, which is fine too. But trying to read this from a standpoint of how can I get better? And when you do, it does get emotional if you're real about things. And some of the things in that last chapter, if you kind of followed his lead, it should have led us to, and it did me, some things that weren't all that pleasant to deal with. And I think, like I was saying earlier, when you're young, you have a nightmare of bad vision, and what does a parent say? Just forget about it. And the book in a book says to capture the thought, and I agree with that. Like, deal with it. Don't let it run wild in our mind and in our spirit, because it will chip away at things. And that's how, we have people that have massive cliffs that they fall off in their life. It's like they were engaged in an activity that was working, but behind the scenes, things are being chipped away into where when the fall comes, it's a massive fall. So dealing with that stuff is not only, therapeutic psychology from a psychological standpoint, but like I talked about last week, his practice, his, psychology degree was about, which he loves, was about getting people from, broken or sick or unhealthy psychologically to healthy. Where now his new passion is, I want to not only do that, but I also want to help healthy people become the best that they can be. And as he calls them, deja vu people. And, we have different definitions of success, each one of us, right? It's defined by ourselves, but I like the generalizations. I always call it becoming the best version of ourselves. He calls it getting out of life what they want. And that's true, right? I mean, it really is. I mean, it's so true. And on some levels, I live that. On others, I don't, which is why this is so beneficial to me. I mean, I talked to Alberto, my pastor in Nicaragua today, and he was, profusely thanking me for getting on with him once, maybe sometimes twice a week. And I'm like, Alberto, I feel like you're thanking me for getting ice cream for myself. Like, it's good for me. Like, it's like, I appreciated it, but it's so rewarding for me personally. And the same holds true with this. All right, so let's kind of get into it. This chapter has a lot of examples. He actually does some role play, which I think is beneficial, because a lot of times when people are writing these books, Leandro, they're talking about principles that I don't know many people would disagree with. The challenge and the bridge that you need to find is how's that practical? What does that look like in my life? Like, how do I implement that? Chase your dreams. Well, okay, where do I go, right? What's my first step? So I do like the practical nature of this. It is a little bit longer of a chapter than I think we're used to based on the books we've done. But it does make the training a little bit easier, because I can just go to the principles. We don't need to do the role play. It's in the book, and he's going to do a better job of it than I am. All right. So I'm just going to go to my notes and kind of start there. You guys, please chip in, dial in. Has anybody, and there's no wrong answer. It's okay. I've been doing this for a long time. I know not everybody reads along. I know some people listen. I know some people read. I know some people are waiting on their book. I know some people that just sit in sessions like this and get something out of it and don't read. But has anyone actually read the chapter that we're covering today? Okay, good. We got a few people, and we got some that have. That's all right. Hey, that's okay. Man, I'm telling you, one never knows where wisdom is going to come from. All right, this is about pull the tooth. So the last one's dig it up. This is about pull the tooth. And at jump, Leandro, it would sound easy. Like if something's bad in your life, get rid of it. But there's a lot of layers to that he covers in this chapter that I think are fantastic. And he said, one of the principles here is successful people don't hang on to bad stuff for long. And I would say that's true. It does kind of dovetail into the philosophy of practice at getting better, at quickly identifying, and I do this because I'm thinking of a T-sheet in my head, quickly identifying the things that we actually can control and the things we can't control, right? I mean, that in and of itself is a principle that even if you're not good at it, you might say, well, Matthew, every time I read a newspaper clipping, I freak out. I get it. But everything is developable if we're willing to do it, right? And to change our lives, we have to first change how we think. Remember last week, he was in a beautiful architectural room and building and caused everyone to look around and really kind of marvel at the majesty of the architecture and the design. And he said that started in someone's mind. And that's where everything starts. And I think when I say that, if I said that to a room of 1,000 people, I would get 1,000 people when I said that go, yep, started with somebody. but we don't live like that. We live like the building happened first, and we're like going to, like I say, where the ball meets the bat. We're going to impact, and we're not focusing on our approach, our balance, our hands right. Are we, do we sleep well the night before? Or are we well nourished? Are we prepared to take advantage of that situation? And I think all too often we don't look at that stuff, and that's what this is. So the first thing that I would tell you, and he gets right into it here. He says, get rid of the negative energy. Get rid of the negative energy. Now, I'm going to admit that it's hard for me to train on this, only because the reason I don't do like sales training, like up to the customer training, is because I don't sell, right? I mean, I did for my whole life, but I don't do it now. So I don't train on things that I don't really do. Does that make sense? I can train on things that I don't do well, but I have to be doing it, right? So, and honestly, I feel like a lot of people miss it. Sometimes people who don't do things all that well, that's why they're called to train, because then you get better at it. And so anyway, man, I could go on and on. But it says get rid of the negative energy. I have, to some degree, and I'm only telling you this because it's relevant to the story, but I've done a few times in my life, this will be the third time in my life, where I have created what I call, and I don't do it intentionally, like it's not like I set out to do it. I think now I know subconsciously I always have. But my house is 4.5 minutes from my office. I did this 2 other times where my home and my office were very close to each other. I'm a guy, I have a home office. I'm a guy who likes to get out. I mean, I'm more productive when I'm around people, and there are those moments when I want to work. But anyway, so my son goes to school at a place that's like 4 miles away. Our church is, really close. And I really create what I call a bubble. And I do so geographically. Like, this is the third time I've done this. The last one was in Temple Terrace probably 20 years ago, where I was in real estate, and we had a house, and I literally, it was like a 4-minute drive around a golf course to get to my office. It was beautiful. So I kind of live in a bubble, and I'm an outgoing personality who's an introvert. It's true. I'm an introvert, but I have an outgoing personality. It's hard to deal with. I told somebody the other day, I was like, it ain't easy being me. And he goes, it looks fun though. And I go, oh, it's fun. It's just not easy, right? I got to deal with all these crazy things going on in my head. So anyway, I digress. You know what? I need to get with my little study buddy. My study buddy needs to be a part of this.
Matt, Beatrice.
Yeah. Good. See, this is better. This is better. Interrupt me.
Beatrice has a question.
Beatrice?
Yes.
Go ahead, Beatrice.
Yeah, when you were talking, that first principle about letting go of bad stuff, you don't hold on to it for long. Unlike you, I don't live in a bubble. You guys, I don't know if you read what I posted in Search of Peace, but I had a history of suffering from major depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. And God delivered me from so much. But this season, when I got sick and they couldn't find out what was wrong, they kept doing all these tests, I kept getting worse. And I felt that depression coming back. And by reading this and the other one about the energy bus, mm-hmm. and praying and doing the thing you said about focusing, speaking out loud what you're thankful for. I couldn't walk the beach, and that's a major problem, because that's when I talk to the Lord and I have such a good time in the morning. So here I am stuck in this apartment, and I felt that depression coming back. And I just began to speak out, like even in the shower. I would say, God, thank you, I have clean water. Thank you, I have food to eat. Thank you that I have money to go to a doctor. I have money for medicine. And I kept saying it over and over. And I think I used to think it, but this time by speaking it, I could hear it. Yeah. And it began to move me out of that depression, because I can't afford to be depressed. I have to go take care of my mom for 3 weeks on Wednesday. So I just want to say that this works. Yeah. I'm not 100% better. I have to go to a doctor on Wednesday, Tuesday, whatever. But the bottom line is, speaking it makes a difference, and recognizing when it comes, and then saying, no, you don't have room here anymore. Right. You cannot come here anymore. So I just want to say that principle really helped me a lot.
I'm so glad, Beatrice. Living a thankful life cures a lot of things. I'm not kidding you. It's hard to be really angry when you're thankful. And, I was thinking about that with my dad. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, actually with the people in Nicaragua. Our culture is different, and there's some diversity there, which is really, really intriguing to me. And I think I told you sometimes I bring things up to make another bigger point in my mind. But a part of the reasoning that I use to get to my point, that captures their attention. That's what captures. So when I said that I have a joy, so my father died, and then I think it was 2 nights later, I did my Nicaragua Zoom. And I said I had a joy, and I did, and it wasn't a lie, and they couldn't understand that. And so I reflected back on a story that I might have told to most of this group, but I'm gonna tell it again. When I was, I think, 16 years old, maybe 17, my father and I drove to Ocala, which is about an hour and a half north of here. And my uncle, great uncle, his cousin, whatever that makes him, was a pastor. And we went up there for a funeral for his 9-year-old daughter. And he eulogized that funeral. And what made it so powerful was his thanks for the 9 years. That was his message. And what made it so powerful was his sincerity. And I know the guy's family. And he lives like that. And so I was talking about the joy, and I was like, how selfish would it be of me to say, God, or whoever you would thank, coincidence, whatever, that I have this amazing dad who spoke wisdom into me and loved me. And I, he was tender with me, and I don't have that anymore. But instead of focusing on that I don't have it anymore, which I can, I mean, I catch what, we all do. You catch yourself in that moment where you're feeling sorry for yourself. But the reality is that that's not my overwhelming thought. My overwhelming thought is the thanks that I had for my dad. So I would feel so selfish, like a little kid. Like, thanks for giving me all that, but why can't I have more? And I mean that. And that's what I see in my head, this, kid with his frown and, stomping his foot. And I'm thinking that of me, not of people that do that. But having a thankful spirit, not only is it, we know it's biologically impactful to our actual tissues to be, joyful and thankful. You're healthier, you live longer. It just is. That's a fact. So I thank you for saying that, Beatrice. That means a lot. It means a lot. This, there are some people that are, really growing from this. And, there's no landing area. It's not like, oh, I read it. I read the 50th book. I've arrived. We're always a work in progress. So he talks, anyone else? Bueller? He talks about getting rid of negative energy. I'm definitely, and let me go back. I'll complete my story. I've created kind of a bubble, and I've done so geographically, but I've also done so from a spiritual or a mental standpoint, meaning in a book, it says, as for me and my house. The actual scriptures serve the Lord, but you change that. You can make that anything. As for me and my house, I shall not live in fear. As for me and my house, we shall not hate, for differing ideas and differing opinions. And it's being intentional about who I want to be. It's easier for me because I don't have to go to work and work around 50 people that think completely differently than me. And, I don't have to combat that all day. And I know that no matter what, and you guys don't know, other than my faith, y'all don't know my political beliefs, you never will. It's not important. But if, there are people that really find that important and can really, create environments that would be very difficult for me. I think I have psychotically. Oh, it's a Freudian slip. Oh my gosh. I think I've done it subconsciously because I am a huge energy reader. I mean, for better or for worse, like negative energy really wears me out to be around it and kind of combat it. And positive energy lights me up, man, like a light bulb.
Plane.
What's that?
Like a plane.
Yeah. I was thinking about Travis Scott. He's got a song, like a light. Slept right through the flight. All right.
Hey Matt.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. First of all, that chapter, that the second thing was pull the tooth, because I have a real fear of dentists. So just when he said it, I was like, oh.
It's coming at you from all directions.
Yeah. Which one of my favorite things he talked about was the cringe factor. I, of course, in parentheses was like, listen to that discernment. But it's really challenging when you recognize that you do have some negative energy in your life, and it's sort of in a pattern with one particular person. When he said stop the insanity.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to do that when it's coming from a family member.
Yes.
Which I have that situation as we speak, and trying to find that balance as a believer to continue to extend grace to that person, but not be a doormat, because every time I get off the phone with this person, I feel like crap. Yeah. Just because it's just constant like judgment, and I don't understand it. And I want to show love, but I also, like I said, don't want to be a doormat. So it was really interesting to just hear the way he referred to negative energy and getting rid of it, and first trying to do it as a spring cleaning. And then if that, if that doesn't work, then you just have to find a way to, you deal with it. And for me, finding a way to deal with it right now is choosing to basically take a break, because when it's a family member, how do you just, it's hard to just completely walk away. And I can't.
I don't think you should. I'll tell you one time I had a dear friend of mine got in a bitter divorce, and he was a brother of mine in our faith. And, we were really close. And I told him, I said, my position on family, but you're the driver of your bus, right? It's his experience. So I said, you got to do what you got to do. It's up to you. But if you do it, don't break everything on the way out. And he kind of did the opposite of that. And it was horrible. I saw and heard of things about, that he did that I never would have dreamed of. But, bitterness and spite can cause people to do really, really crazy things. And I was with a buddy of mine, Paul Bursloff's his name. He was the pastor at the school that my kids went to. Young guy, sharp dude. And we would have coffee every Tuesday morning. And I told him, I was like, man, I feel like I need to get away from this guy and this and that. And he looked at me and he goes, no way, Pitts. And I said, what do you mean, Paul? And he said, if not you, then who? If not you, then who is going to show that grace, is going to show that love? And this is good, Dana, because I want to read this. It's in the book. This deals with sobriety, but I think you can change that to whatever is destructive in a life. And this is here's kind of the template. I will not, what does it say? For example, someone close to you has an addiction. You can say, I will not remain around anyone who is not living a sober life, or who's an asshole, whatever you want to say. Sorry about that. If you choose to continue, quote unquote, fill in the blank, we cannot live together. I've tried to get you to deal with it, and as long as you won't, I can't do this anymore. I'm still committed to you and to working this out. But I want us to live apart if you're not going to choose to get help and get sober. So the point is kind of drawing those boundaries. And that's why I started this by saying it's complicated. And yes, I don't have to be in a workplace or around a lot of people where I have to put a lot of this into exercise, but I do have family members, and I do have great friends that, do things that upset you. We all do. I told my kids, I said, I'm going to let you down at some point. Your mom will, your coach will, your teacher will, your pastor will, your mentor will. Why? Because we're human, and perfection's unattainable. And it's less about not making mistakes and more about correcting them as you go along, because we've learned over time that we need to stumble, right? We need to grow. So I would say this. I told you guys, see, it's more story time than anything. I told you guys I get some of my greatest epiphany moments from some of the weirdest and strangest places. One of my greatest moments, and it's not particular to this conversation, was from the old He-Man cartoon. Cool. I'm not even kidding you, man. It's changed my life. Changed my life. But this one, I was watching a show called The Dog Whisperer. Anybody ever heard of The Dog Whisperer? Old Caesar Milan. Yeah. So this guy, I guess I knew who he was. This was years ago. So that's why I asked, because, he's not mainstream anymore. But this guy can go and, he's a dog whisperer. If you got a dog that's freaking out and he goes in there and he whispers to him, man. He's pretty cool. I've only ever seen one episode. In fact, I didn't see the whole episode, Leandro. I only saw one segment. And from what I can gather, he works like in one episode, he's got like 2 or 3 dogs, and it switches, right? Mm-hmm. Or anyway, so anyway, there's this young couple. They're in a condo or townhome, and they had kind of this Labrador Retriever mix, right? Call it 70 pounds. Beautiful dog. As soon as they left, the dog would tear up the house. Now listen, I'm not talking about chewed up a shoe. I'm talking about, like, did you know most door handles are hollow? He chewed it to a nub. He tore window sills out of the windows. He tore drapes off. I'm talking about really tearing it up. And I'm an old Southern boy. I was born in Florida, pseudo Southern. But I was like, I'd kill that dog. Ain't no dang dog. It's a dog. Like, I love Max. Max, my dog, he's my boy. But he starts tearing things up. We're going to have a problem. I was like, man. And then the camera pans to the female owner, and it's a side shot, and you can see the tear running down her cheek. Oh man, it makes me cry now. Not cry, it makes me emotional. And Caesar said, why are you crying? And she said, because I can only imagine what's going on in his poor little mind and his poor little spirit to create that kind of destructive behavior. And I wonder how many times we look at the destruction of an alcoholic or an addict of any time, or someone going, I lost my dad, then lost my aunt. And it's like, I've recognized that I was turning into somebody that I didn't want to be, like quickly, like I was going down. And it's like, you might find somebody who doesn't recognize that and goes even further and becomes emotionally or, destructive to people. And I wonder how many times if we could just stop, and I'm not, sometimes we need to be pissed. I'm not an enabler, don't get me wrong. But wouldn't it be nice to have a bigger heart for, the turmoil that's going on? I mean, people don't grow up wanting to be addicted to heroin. No, I've never heard the saying, well, things are really tough. And man, I started using heroin, and man, things just turned around. And when, it's like, we all know that what can happen. So nobody wakes up, nobody grew up, that wasn't anybody's desire, right? So again, I just think having that thankful spirit, thank you that I'm here to at least be a stable person. Thank you. And I would say that for parents out there, my dad told me one time, he said, you have to remain committed to who you are. He said, because your kids are going to wander and they're going to want to come back. And if you're not where they left you, if you're not, don't still have that value system, if you still have that integrity, if you're not where they left you, they're not going to find you again. In other words, the connection is going to be lost. Does that make sense? So being thankful is easier to live, but that really, when we talk about getting rid of the negative, he takes it a step lighter. Like we went kind of deep dive. If you pull back a little bit, another thing that influenced me was little things that are pesky in our lives. Like I've got a $9.99 Spotify account that's been running for like 3 years. Nobody uses it. And I recognize that not tending to that, that's a simple example, but it's true. Not tending to that, which is probably, nobody wants to lose $120 a year, but it's probably not all that bad. It's not like as bad as what we're talking about, but it can chip away, because to me, it is a negative drag, right? And I know that's a small example, but how many of those do we have in our lives? And then it gets to the point where it's like, yes, now you've got people that are negative in your life that you have to be with. What if you go to work, Leandro, and you have a work partner, and you guys are doing a project together? Like, I can't answer to that. That's where I can't train, because I, thankfully, very thankfully, and put in a position where I get to choose who I want to work with. And so, but I know not everybody does. And I have a very positive, amazingly joyful wife. And I know that there are at least seasons and sometimes people that have a spouse that are not as joyful. And in fact, turn it around. Stacy has a spouse that's not as joyful and vibrant as my spouse. So I get it, you know what I mean? So get busy fixing the little things. One of the things I thought of too is I've got a very, very wonderful friend. You actually know him. He's a fantastic guy. I mean, fantastic guy. I love him. He makes me feel good about me. I've known him for 30 years. I can say whatever I want from him. I can be me. But when he owes me money, he doesn't pay, or he's a slow pay. And so years ago, I just figured, you know what? I'm gonna quit lending him money. Draw a line. If there's a way, like every time I tell this person I'm to be there at 9, they show up at 9:15. And the initial thought, if you think about it in that hypothetical, but I think it's relative, predicated over almost everything, is it's ego. It's like, he doesn't find me as important. He doesn't value my time. And honestly, I'm not saying that might be wrong, might not be wrong, but we can't control that. So the only thing we can control is either stop meeting with the person or tell him 9 and show up at 9:15. You know what I'm saying? I did that with my buddy Marcus. Oh my God, he'd kill me if I told you the story. We're at Todd. Is it Todd? It's Todd's wedding. Todd's wedding. Is it Todd's wedding? Hey, we're at wedding, and he's an amazing singer, and so he's going to do a song before the wedding. And I told the wedding coordinator, I said, if you need him there at 4, you need to tell him the rehearsal starts at 3:30. And she did. And so then I'm hustling to get him there by 4. Right? And we're walking along, and just coincidentally, we're talking about flaky people who, don't do what they say, don't show up on time. And he goes, man, those kind of people. And I go, dude, that's you. I go, let me let you in on a little secret. The rehearsal that you think that we're 32 minutes late for, we're actually 2 minutes late for, because we actually told you a half hour before, because you suck at showing up on time. So it's just about, like he says, deja vu people carry tools with them to deal with the inevitability of life, which in this case, he equates it to gravity, right? So it pulls us down, something you got to deal with. Some of us don't deal with it at all. We don't dig it up. We don't we don't deal with it, right? Some of us use it to become great. I mean, look at the Wright brothers. They used gravity, the force that pulls everything down. They used it for greatness. Think about Elon Musk right now, shooting rockets up and landing them and shooting the same damn one up again. Using the very thing that pulls most people down. And so switch gravity with struggles, heartbreak, failure, sorrow, all those things, poor relationships, great relationships, all those things serve to make us better. So instead of not digging it up and running away from our fears, we build calluses on our minds, and we build calluses on our spiritual infrastructure when we deal with those things. Those are the very things that are keeping us from growing. But everybody, oh, I don't want to fail. You know, what if I don't get it? You know, it's just, and listen, I say these funny voices because I'm making fun of me. I'm thinking of times when I was like that. When I do the stopping kid, that's not other people, that's me. Like when I'm being a little selfish brat. Oh, well, you know, thank you for the, and I tell my kids all the time, life is seasons. It's totally seasons. Nothing stays the same. Why act like that? I remember people used to think I was sociopathic because I'm good at saying goodbyes. Hey, if you got to go, if you got your path, I got mine. Let's hope it meets again. I've loved this season of being with you. And I don't keep up with people very well. I got a really bad story. We were in Columbus, Georgia for 2 years. I'll make this quick. For 2 years, we lived there. And then when we left, I worked in the bar. I managed a live music club. And so they had this huge party for me. It was awesome. Gave me a pool cue. I mean, it was cool. And I stood up, and this is, if I'm lying, I'm dying. At the end of the night, I stood up on the pool table, thanked everybody. I said, if you're here, you've been a part of my experience in Columbus. I just love you. I appreciate you. But I do. You all have meant something to me in my life. You bettered me. You know, you've been part of my experience. But I'm here to tell you, as your friend, I'll probably never see or talk to you guys ever again. Now, this is before social media. This is before, even chatting wasn't a deal. It was still, cost per minute on a cell phone. And this is back in the day. And, I literally have never spoken to any one of those people after that night.
You enjoy it.
But it wasn't like I'm avoiding them. I'm moving on. And this is true. This is not a fake self-deprecation. I'm a very simple dude. I'm so in the moment to a fault at times. Like I need to stop and hold the lantern up and get my vision sometimes because I have that 3-foot rule. Like tomorrow's not promised. And yes, hey, I've got investments. I mean, don't get me wrong. But in my everyday walk, I don't want to make those kind of assumptions. And it just makes it simpler for me. But identifying what the things I have control of and the things that I do not makes it simpler for me. I mean, honestly, I don't know how it wouldn't for anybody. Man, we're going long today, guys. I'm going to apologize right now. Let me stop, wet the whistle, see if we got any input. This is exactly what I did want to have happen, me just lecturing for an hour.
Dana and Nisi, there is sharing. I'm hearing so many great things. I've been in the system for a while, depression. I've dealt with anxiety and panic as well. This is coming from Nisi.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, Dana, that has been one of my biggest struggles. It is so hard to balance grace and boundaries.
Mm-hmm. That's where I can't train. Like I wouldn't even presume to have a keen understanding on exactly how to do it. All I would say is that our intention and our mindset. Read something pleasant for those of you who have a faith. Get in that meditation and get in that thankful spirit. I think for me, it's I have my own tools that I bring. And that's what he says. Deja vu people bring tools to deal with the very things that cause other people to stumble and fall and deal, with lack. That was one of the things I want to talk about was the lack of forgiveness. Like you got to let that go.
Yeah.
I read a book. My brother gave me a book. Oh man, I can't remember the name of it under off the top of my head. It's like 5. If I can remember, my brother gave me a book that I read over Christmas, and it changed everything for me. And I can't even tell you what was it in the book? It's like I don't know. It's just me reading it. Like there wasn't one like this. I would say, hey, there's probably 5 or 10 things in here that, man, are huge. This was more benign in the approach. It didn't have such rich topics, I don't think. But when I got done, it just made sense to me. And I would say that as much as it makes sense to me now is as much as it probably didn't before I read that book. Now, the book wasn't the only thing, right? It's never one thing, right? That was just, I guess, the straw that broke that camel's back. But harboring ill emotions for people is, I mean, you got to read the book. I just know that it's not good for me.
Hey, Matthew,
Yeah, babe.
I loved when he said, move quickly to get rid of whatever is crushing your spirit.
Yes. Yeah.
And he used Proverbs 17:22 as an example, you know, just as to back that up. And I thought that was really good, because I think sometimes we don't take those thoughts captive, and that's where the battle starts, is in the mind.
Yeah.
And it continues from there. And, you know, when the enemy can take opposition and turn it into oppression,
Mhm.
then he's taken a foothold. And so I loved that about just, you know, getting rid of whatever's crushing your soul, if it's weighing you down. Again, gravity.
Well, and it could be like, for me, it was Twitter. Like I'm seriously, I got rid of Twitter because
Yeah, I'm not on there anymore.
I don't, you know, it's like, and I don't really, again, I'm an introvert. I do love seeing my friends and family on Facebook, but I haven't, you know, I just thought about it the other day. I haven't looked for months at new friend requests. Like, I guess there's a place you can look and see. I just, you know, I don't know. I'm very selective. And here's what I would say. I remember Scotty Rogers, a pastor friend of mine, great guy. And I asked him one time, I go, how do you, like, as a pastor, you got 500 families, right? Or 300 families. It's like, how do you navigate all that? And he's like, well, you got to put it in perspective. He said, yes. I mean, I know the face, and I maybe haven't talked to everybody yet, but I talk to people and I pray for people, and people come in for marriage counseling. It's one of his specialties. But there's a small group of people, or smaller group of people, that I actually walk through life with. And I call it letting people into my house. And I don't mean my physical house, which I do mean too. I'm careful who I let in my home, but I'm talking about my house, like my bubble. I am protective of whom I associate with. Outside of thinking, the next most important thing that we can do, you know, developing and reading and thinking and getting this mind going, is whom we associate with. That is everything. And so here, let's get to the other end of the spectrum, which is, there are people in your life that we need to get out. And I know, and I don't know what that looks like for you. I've done that. Like, for years ago, I'm not around negative people. I can't do it. I told you I'm sensitive to that. But there are going to be things, certainly activities, habits, people. Maybe it's your job. I mean, if you hate your job, honestly, you guys, and I'm not speaking to anybody. And if anybody says, hey, I quit because Pitt said to quit, no, we will erase this, and I will deny it, because that's not what I mean. But listen, if your job sucks, I know, there was a job I had where I literally stayed up later on. This is a true story. I would stay up late Sunday night, and I'm a morning guy. I would force myself to stay up late so that Monday took longer to come. That's how much I hated it. But I was actively working to get out of it. Like, and that was there and lied the hope. But without that, wow, man, if that's the case, read the Energy Bus. Then you're George. And there's a lot of parts of George that I am, for sure. Not some of them, but definitely the others. You know what I mean? And I want to read this to you. And this is, we're coming up on it. Hey, we can stay here. This isn't about, I got to get through this time. I mean, we're the masters of our own domain, are we not? This is our bubble. We call the shots in our bubble. All right, so I want to read this. And this was the validating thing for me. I mean, I couldn't wait to tell Stacy. And the reason is because I really, honestly, when I'm getting it right, which is most of the time, when I can tell you, I'm an upbeat, positive dude. I really want to be a blessing to people. I call people by their name. I thank them. I really want to. Catherine said one time, it's almost like you want to wow people with your kindness, which was a fantastic compliment. But then there's other times where somebody cuts me off and I'm in my car by myself. Maybe the rhetoric isn't as positive. You know, I'll go ahead and admit that. But one thing that gets me to react in a kind of a way that doesn't represent what I just talked about, right? It's maybe a little abrasive, or it's a little curt.
What page are you reading from, Matt?
52. First real paragraph, it's like a third of the, or maybe a quarter of the way down the page. Second sentence, not long ago. Okay, so let me read this. And I'm only sharing this because some of you may be like this, and I don't know, maybe it's a revelation to you, or at least affirming. Like, it just makes me feel like, oh my gosh, thank you. It's like Al-Anon, right? You think you're going through all this stuff by yourself, and you go to an Al-Anon meeting, and it's like, oh, there's other spouses that are dealing with the very same thing I am. Okay. Not long ago, I went to a restaurant and ordered a glass of milk. 1%, thank you. He cares. What if it had been skim? then I'd have been like, I don't know, I don't relate to the dude. Almond, I got to turn the page. We have nothing in common. Okay, not long ago, I went into a restaurant and ordered a glass of milk. No one in the kitchen bothered to check the milk's expiration date, which had passed over a month ago. I took a big gulp, and there's no way to explain how the milk tastes. The experience was beyond taste. As the poison invaded my mouth, nose, senses, and throat and being, I made no decision about whether to hold on to it. I did not sit there and think, maybe I ought to give it a little bit more time. It will taste better. I did not ponder the situation. Instead, my body took over for me. It was involuntary. My entire system rejected the toxic substance. Every muscle group that I'm aware of was involved. It was automatic, done without thought. That is the speed with which our successful deja vu person's character handles negative things that are in the way of a meal called life. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. That's why I'm such a jerk when I get to the negative. Oh, that's not negative. It's like now it's like the whole thing's negative. Man, can you imagine? Poor Stacy. Poor sweet Stacy. So anyway, that was the validating part. I know not everybody has energy sensitivity, is what I call it. I don't even know if that's a word or a phrase, but it's what I call what I feel. But man, how validating it is.
That happened to me, like literally happened to me when I was young.
With milk?
Yes. My grandmother on my dad who adopted me on his side, she gave me this big giant tall, and I don't honestly remember ever liking milk in my whole life, but I can promise you that after that moment,
You never had milk?
not liking it was not a strong enough word.
My son,
when there's clumps, when milk is lumpy.
Oh my gosh. I got two stories. One, James took a big chug out of a milk jug. It was the little ones, and he goes, "Dad, I think this is rotten." It was buttermilk. I was like, dude, it looks like milk, but it ain't milk, dude. Here's a question I have. It's not a story, it's a question. Has anybody, like, when you smell the sour milk, and you go, smell that. Why do people do that? Like, I just saw your reaction. I don't want to smell that rotten milk.
Because they want to share that experience.
Misery loves company.
Yes.
See? You got to pull that tooth. You need to get out of my house with that. I'm not sharing in your misery. All right. Hey, listen, we're kind of up against it. This is a little list. Unless somebody's got something, it's actually would be perfect. I can get through this quick list, which I think is, I starred 4 of probably 8. The many reasons. There are many reasons, but most have to do either with a lack of skills or good modeling of exactly how to acquire and implement an emotional and spiritual immune system. And these are some of them, like, carry around the tools, like fear of someone's anger or hurt if you deal with the problem, right? That's something that, I can definitely resonate. Fear of someone's judgment or disapproval when you deal with negative things. Fear of actually losing the relationship itself. I would say sometimes we're holding on very, very tightly to the very things that we probably should get out of our lives, Leandro. In fact, I have an old saying, there's always 10% of the garden that can be, weeded and taken out and put in new. So there should always be some churning, right? So Stacy, let's see, I got maybe another year with her. She'll churn me out. I'll be the 10%. She'll put something new in, somebody younger, a newer model, right? All right, so I think I just kind of, wait, there's one more. And then I kind of want to stop there. Guilty feelings when you confront someone or deal out consequences. I feel that with my kids. I hate taking stuff from my kids. Paralysis when the problem comes back to you. Self-blame and feeling like you're the problem or feeling like you caused it. Inability to let go things because you fear you cannot replace them. You will not find another relationship, job, someone, right? It's like that's the fear of, if somebody hates their job, and they're working for somebody they don't like, it doesn't value them, respect them, care for them, you grow them, bless them. I asked the question too, like, think about somebody, it could be male or female, it happens to both, certainly more to females than males, but a physically abusive relationship. You hear about these where people stay together. Like, she's been physically or he's been physically or emotionally abused for 20 years. It's like, year 1, shame on you. Year 2, it's like, I got to start accepting the blame. And I don't mean it like that. I have a legitimate curiosity as to the psychology of why an abused spouse would remain. And I know, physical fear is one of them. But man, what a interesting thing right? Because at Jump, you'd be like, if somebody's beating me up, I'm not going to be with them. But they do. And they're not, I mean, it's, I don't think they're like, I value that. Like, I want to understand why, not mock it at all. But I think that we do that too. I think that's a very extreme reality that we're using as an example on things that happen at a much lower rate. Like even the, I boycotted Walmart. I boycotted Walmart years ago. I will never sit in Walmart. And listen, I'm not here to recruit boycotters for Walmart. If you like Walmart, God love you. I'm not saying anything that they're not for. Like there's a butt for every seat. I just know every time I'm there, it sucks. So I don't go anymore. So that is, but I did for a long time. I just kept going to Walmart, like until it got so bad, right? The nail hurt. The nail was digging in so bad. I finally got up and moved. And I wonder, you know, so if those are some questions we need to ask ourselves, like, are there things that are hurting quite a bit, but maybe not enough to cause us to move? Wouldn't it be better before the pain got so bad that we were able to get up off that nail? And y'all know the story.
Hey, Matt.
Right? Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you were, I didn't want to
No,
interrupt.
you're good. You're good. I'm telling you, I'm pro interrupting me. I'm actually an advocate for that.
Okay. Well, then I'll do it more often. No, I'm kidding. One of the things that I love that he said, and he said it, and I'm listening to the book right now. I'm going to get a copy as well, because I want to go back and underline some things. But one of the things he said in the very beginning, when he talked about when he first bought that company, and it was a successful company, it was growing, there was nothing wrong with it, but he literally sold off 80% of it at a loss to himself, because he realized that only 20% of it was really the life of the company.
Right.
And I loved that, because it made me think about, I love to garden. Like I have a lot of flowers and it's like my thing. I just love to get my hands in the dirt. I feel close to the Lord when I'm gardening. It's just a thing. Yeah. And he speaks to me when I'm doing that. And one of the things I hate to do is prune. I hate to cut things back. I'm like, but there's a bloom there. But I've realized over the years that cutting that stuff back only brings it back stronger and better. And so I thought, man, that took a lot of guts for him to do that. But I loved that he did that. I thought that was really cool.
I got to thank you for that, Dana. I love that part too. I know, remember, if you guys ever want to see a really cool video, type in Lou Holtz graduation ceremony. And Lou Holtz was a national champion for Notre Dame, coach for 3 years running. He's a Hall of Fame guy. In fact, they got a statue of him outside of Notre Dame. And he said that once they found the success, they stayed there. They didn't change anything, and they got 3 years of it. And that was his biggest regret, that he didn't challenge and try. He feels like he lost 3 years of growth and development, trying to just, maintain as opposed to continuing to grow. And like you said, cut back. And then I'll close with this story. I forget how many years ago, but there was a fire in Yellowstone Park. Y'all remember that? It was thousands of acres. Well, Stacy's from Wyoming. And at that time, her mom lived in Wyoming, Jackson Hole. We go there once, well, without COVID, we typically try to go once a year at least in the summer. She loves it out there. Like she blows up out there. So anyway, we're in Yellowstone, and you would listen to the photos and the video. They do not do it at all justice. It was just miles of burn, and it was amazing. And my mother-in-law at that time was dating a guy named Ian, who was like a really cool dude. Wore the cowboy hat. He was a search and rescue guy, played the drums. I mean, he was something else. Like I had kind of a crush on him, to be honest with you. And anyway, we're driving through, so he knows the area. He's from the area. And he says, do you know why this happened? And I was like, me, he already figured out I was a geek and I love learning, useless knowledge. So he said, do you know how this happened? And I said, no. And he says, well, what happens is methane gets caught builds under the leaves. So when a lightning strikes a tree and creates a spark, it lights up the methane. He said, but I'll spare the term that he used. But the people who were in charge, they didn't like those little fires. They're the environmentalists, and they kept putting them out. They wouldn't let it burn. And so because they didn't like, and I don't mean this to be condescending. I kind of do. Like, the beautiful trees, it's nature. We got to save them. We got to save them. And what they did was they stopped that natural burn from happening. So over time, the methane kept building to where now, when it started, they can't stop it. And it's completely devastating. So if we, I got children, would think about that. If you or we, Dana, and everyone don't let that burn happen. If we don't prune the 10%, whatever that is, that's just a euphemism. But if we're not actively letting things out of our life and letting it burn, because when those small burns happen, and then now they do control burns. You've heard that too, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not getting lightning. They have to, other places are like, we got it because we know what will happen. So, but when we have that, it's not pleasant. It's never pleasant watching a beautiful forest burn. It hurts. It's painful. But they're the brokenhearted. When we stumble, when we struggle, when we hurt, when we are sorrowful, when we win, when we fail, everything is used to become a better us. So if we don't dig it up and we don't start pulling the tooth and letting that burn happen, that's when people fall off the cliff, right? I'm not removing some things in my life, and all of a sudden I look around and my life sucks. I don't like where I work. I'm not very comfortable in my relationships. I'm not serving anyone. And then that's when it's like that's when you talk about the enemy. It's like, now, I'm not worth anything. I'm not productive. Who am I helping? And so it's ironic that to live a joyful, like, you have to let that stuff burn for new growth. And to live that life means we have to face and we have to deal with. And what he would say, and we can get into it next week because we'll be kind of in the same chapter, is do it quickly. Have you ever heard, Stephen Covey, First Things First, great book. That's where the time quadrants come from. He said, put your big rocks in first, meaning do the hard stuff that you don't want to do first in the day, talking about tasks. Do the one that you don't want to do first. Get those over with and work your day in order of, I don't want to do all the way down. And I think we need to do that in our life, is deal with the stuff that we don't want to deal with. And I have those things, y'all. I'm not saying, hey, this is what you guys need to do. It's awesome what you do. Like there's some things I've dug up. Like, I've got to deal with this. And honestly, all of it's with me. Again, I live in a bubble. I don't really have any outer issues that are really, hurting me right now. It's the inner stuff. And so I wrote down, to deal with.
I wrote down letting go of the good to embrace the great.
Oh man. Right.
Sometimes we just stop at good, and God has great for us, but we're not willing to push through to that next step. I'm really at a crossroads with my business right now, and just having to do things differently, and figure it out. And there's always another way.
Yeah. And here's the thing, there's a tipping point. So, I think I guys told you, I ruptured my Achilles a couple of years ago, and I lost my golf swing, and I had to go out and find it again. And it was awful. It was awful. I mean, if I was a quitter, I'd have quit. I'm gonna be honest with you. If I was a quitter, I'd have quit. But pushing through all that suck, and now there's a tipping point. So it's not like, oh, day 100, I was 5% better. Day 200, I was 10% better. It doesn't work like that. It's like you push. And I'm naming this right now for you, Dana. This is on my heart for you specifically, but I'm telling you, it's valuable for everybody. You keep pushing and you think, oh, if I'm increasing at this rate, it's going to take me 82 years to get there. It doesn't happen that way. It's called The Tipping Point. There's a book called The Tipping Point. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go. It's a fantastic book. And it does talk about that there's a cumulative effect of our efforts in a consistent basis. Consistency is the key. If you're consistently pushing, consistently burning, consistently, being thankful in times of trial where the weather's not all that great in our life, and finding the good in things, then there comes a point where it's like the dominoes start to go. And I know it's a simple analogy, but that's where I am in my golf game. Like, I'm very confident right now. And there was a time where, my biggest thing was personally, spiritually, because I'm a competitor and I couldn't compete. Like, it was embarrassing. I want to compete. I want to be on a team. I want to help somebody win. That's just my personality. So that was my why. It wasn't so, hey, look what I shot. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, I just want to get out there and compete. And I'm getting older, so I can't, every time I play basketball, I get hurt. Stacy won't let me play basketball. She won't. I'm literally barred from playing basketball. I can play half court, but she prefers horse. So you can play horse, you just can't go full court. And in her defense, man, every time I do, I break or tear something. All right, we're up against, hey, we're 6 minutes long, Leandro.
Yes.
Woo! Man, it's got to be good to go long. I hope you all have a fantastic, hold on, let me open this up. I can see everybody. I hope you all have a fantastic day, fantastic weekend. I'm going to let you guys know, and typically I wouldn't do this. It's not about me, but let's make it about me. My dad calls it back to me, or he used to. He called it back to, so it's like you're telling somebody, telling a story, and they're like, yeah. Well, listen to what I did, back to me. There's a professional golf tournament here called the Valspar. Top players in the world, Phil Mickelson, Rory McIlroy. I mean, So my buddy Bill, the guy who got us to stumble onto this, is a Chick-fil-A operator. They're a major sponsor. So I got a VIP ticket to the Snake Pit on the 18th green all day tomorrow. Man, I'm telling you, I'll be like a girl at a Beatles concert. Man. All right, you guys have a great day. Thank you so much. Hey, the group's building. Tell somebody about it, man. Tell somebody about it. Let's get some positive in people's lives, right? I love it.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, GB. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.